What is going on, guys? Jesse here, and today we're talking about the brand new IQUNIX F97. So if you guys have been keeping up with the channel at all, you've probably heard me rave about this keyboard, the IQUNIX F96. Because for pretty much the past year, this has been my go-to mechanical keyboard and my favorite pre-built keyboard that I've ever used because it had pretty much everything that I was looking for in a keyboard. It was a high-quality, well-built mechanical keyboard, had wireless connectivity, worked on both Mac and PC, and finally it had a numpad and function keys. And since getting this board, I've been largely satisfied with its performance and usage. But now IQUNIX has released a new version of this board, the F97. Which solves pretty much everything that I had an issue with in the previous version, and even solved some problems that I didn't know I had. So first, let's go over a quick overview of the board. So this still has what's called a 96% layout, so I feel like it would have made a lot more sense to call this the F96 Mark II or something like that, but whatever. This is my personal favorite layout because it keeps the number pad and function keys while still remaining relatively compact by getting rid of all the empty spaces that you would find in a full-size keyboard, giving it this sort of candy bar-esque look that I, for whatever reason, just find very satisfying to look at. And speaking of the look, IQUNIX offers this in a couple of different styles, but the one I've got here is the Hitchhiker model that has this sort of off-white and greenish color scheme with a space theme to it that I personally think is pretty cool. Although I really wish they had an all-white version like the F96 because I probably would have gotten that instead, especially since I was a huge fan of the cat keycaps that came with that board. I think it made a pretty big difference in terms of the sound and the feel of that board, but the keycaps on here aren't bad though. PBT with a nice texture on it that feels good on the fingertips. Build quality wise, just like the last version, the case is made out of 5 thick solid pieces of aluminum, 4 for the sides and 1 larger piece for the back plate, giving it a weight of about 1,200 grams. And just picking it up and feeling it, this thing seriously has some heft to it, and it just feels like it's a well-made product. No flex whatsoever, and you could probably kill someone with this if you really wanted to, or needed to. For the switches, you can choose between a variety of Cherry or TTC offerings. The ones I have in here are the Cherry Browns, which are fine, but honestly way scratchier than I was anticipating. Honestly, I meant to order the TTC Aces, but somehow I made this mistake and I'm more of a linear guy anyways. It's okay though, cause this is now hot swappable, meaning that you can change the switches without having to desolder anything, and you can just use the included switch puller to pull them out and replace them, which is one of my main complaints about the F96, so super happy that it's here now. Also for the stabilizers, they're using Co-Stars and they come pre-lubed, which is nice, but honestly I'm too much of a novice at this to really tell you if they did a good job, but I'll let you decide for yourself in the sound test. And I'll also include a sound test of the F96 in case you were wondering how they compared. And both of them are completely stock as well, the only difference being that the F96 has the cherry reds with the cat keycaps. And last thing before I stop talking to you and let you hear what they sound like, I know I type like a first grader, so please don't roast me too hard. Alright, so that's what they sound like, and honestly I think both of them sound really good for pre-builts. Other than the scratchiness of the Browns, I'm pretty satisfied. Now moving on, let's talk about the features of the board, because there's a lot of them. So one of the biggest things that I look for in a keyboard is wireless connectivity, and one of the great things about this board that was also great about the F96 is what they're calling tri-mode connection, which basically means it has the ability to connect via wired USB-C connection, Bluetooth, or 2.4 GHz for a more stable connection and better response times with the included dongle. One note about the wire connection though is that the area around the port is now made out of plastic, whereas the last one was metal. It doesn't really affect anything, but it just seems like a strange downgrade to make. But I pretty much exclusively use this in Bluetooth mode though, and it works great. It now has Bluetooth 5.1, which is apparently more stable than the last version, but I never had any issues to begin with, so that's good. And also, just like before, you can still connect this to up to 3 devices at a time as well and switch between them really quickly and easily. The only issue that I really noticed while using it in Bluetooth mode though was that it takes a couple of seconds to wake up if you haven't used it for a while, and it feels slower than the older version, which is kind of strange. Not a huge deal, but it's just sometimes I find myself wondering why my keyboard isn't working. And it can also switch between Mac and PC layouts, making it perfect for my setup where I use both. If you just use Mac though, they do include extra keycaps for the Command and Option keys as well, so you don't have to look at those dirty Windows keys. And of course, because it's wireless, it also has a built-in battery, and this year they've also greatly increased the size from last year. So now it's a 4000 mAh cell inside, which IQUNIX claims will last up to 260 days, which is insane, especially considering the last version, the F96, only lasted around 20 days, making that an increase of 13 times. And it recharges via the USB-C port in the back, which takes about 5 hours. So super happy with that. Like, I can totally live with only having to charge this thing like 1.5 times a year. So overall, even though this seems like a pretty iterative update from the previous model, I think all of the upgrades that they did make are very welcome additions and will make this a much better board for the people that were already attracted to something like the F96. Even though I think this still probably doesn't compare to a proper custom mechanical keyboard, it's still leagues ahead of something that you would get from one of the bigger manufacturers like Razer, Corsair, or Logitech. And it's a great option for someone who's interested in the enthusiast mechanical keyboard market, but finds the whole process of choosing and buying the right components for their build to be both too intimidating and time consuming to take the leap. And I say that because that's exactly where I'm coming from right now. And I'm so glad that this board exists. Especially now that it's hot swappable, I can experiment with trying different switches as well, which is half the fun of the hobby. And even compared to other boards that I think this is competing with, like let's say the Keychron K4, this is in another world in terms of quality. It is, however, also in another world in terms of price as well. Retailing for $245, this will probably seem like a ridiculous option for someone new to the world, but you'll find that the deeper that you dive into this hobby, you'll realize that that would not even be considered an expensive board in the enthusiast market. So I guess my point is that yes, this is expensive, but if you're looking for an upgrade to your typing experience and you're willing to pay for it, this is a great option to have. Anyways, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Remember to smash that like button, and if you enjoy content like this, think about subscribing and hitting the bell so you don't miss anything. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace!